Imagine this: a neighborhood war so absurd, so personal, that it turned into a full-blown criminal investigation. A 52-year-old HOA Karen, her $60,000 Escalade, and one man's concrete revenge that would expose a secret worth tens of thousands. It all started with one trash can and ended with the downfall of a suburban queen who thought she was untouchable. Now picture this. It's a crisp Monday morning in suburban Ohio. The air smells like coffee and cold asphalt. The sun hasn't even cleared the rooftops yet when you hear it, that familiar crunch. But this time, it's not plastic shattering, it's metal bending. That sound, that deep, solid thunk, wasn't the sound of defeat. It was the sound of karma. Because Brenda Whitmore had just rammed her luxury SUV into something she couldn't bully, a concrete trash can built by the man she'd tormented for months. My name's Marcus Holloway. I'm 45, an electrician, a dad, and apparently the unwilling star of the most ridiculous HOA feud in Pinewood Gardens history. It all began with a conversation, one that planted a seed in my mind, a seed that would grow into Brenda's worst nightmare. You see, when you've had your property destroyed 57 times by the same woman, something inside you snaps, not out of rage, but precision. You start planning, calculating, waiting. That weekend, I stood in my garage staring at a 60-pound bag of concrete mix and a few lengths of steel rebar, and I thought, if she wants to play demolition derby every Tuesday morning, let's make it interesting. The plan was simple, elegant, and completely legal. A reinforced trash can built like a bunker but disguised as ordinary suburban plastic. Total cost, 47 bucks. Compared to the 350 I'd spent replacing the old ones, it felt like poetic justice. But before I poured that concrete, I needed to deal with her harassment campaign, the endless stream of violation letters, petty fines, and anonymous complaints. So I did what any electrician with 22 years of permit experience would do. I used the system against her. I documented everything: grass heights, mailbox colors, screen tears, all the tiny violations she claimed made me a menace to society. But here's the twist. I also documented everyone else's. 14 other homes had the exact same issues, and guess what? Not a single one received a violation. That wasn't just bias. That was discrimination. And I had the proof to back it up. When I ran the numbers, the pattern hit me like a jolt of voltage. 67 violation notices in the past year. 49 of them targeted single parents, minorities, or elderly residents. Only 18 went to long-term homeowners or married couples. The bias was so obvious, it was practically glowing neon. That's when I realized this wasn't about trash cans. This was about control, about power, and maybe something bigger. Friday afternoon rolled around, and I started my concrete project. Emma and Tyler, my kids, were in the garage helping me mix cement. Classic rock played in the background, the smell of wet concrete filling the air. It reminded me of my dad, of summer projects and hard lessons. Except this time, we weren't building a basement floor. We were building justice. By Monday morning, my creation stood ready. On the outside, it looked like every other trash can in the neighborhood. But inside, 60 pounds of steel-reinforced truth waited to deliver karma. 6:15 a.m., Brenda's Escalade appeared right on cue. I watched through my kitchen window, coffee steaming in my hands. She slowed down. She'd noticed something was different. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was ego. But she went for it anyway. The first hit sounded glorious, a deep, solid crack that made the mug vibrate in my palms. Her Escalade jolted. The running board folded like cheap foil. My trash can didn't even flinch. She froze, confused, staring at it like it had personally insulted her. Then, unbelievably, she tried again. A different angle. More throttle, more damage, same result. By the end of that week, her SUV looked like it had gone through a war zone. Bent panels, cracked headlights, and nearly $800 in damage, all self-inflicted. Meanwhile, my concrete can stood proud and undefeated. The neighborhood started whispering. People peeked out their curtains, timing her collisions like it was some twisted morning ritual. Kids were placing bets. Adults were pretending not to laugh. And Brenda? She was unraveling. By mid-November, she'd turned from concerned citizen into full-blown conspiracy theorist. She started stalking my house. Not metaphorically, literally. Tuesday morning, Mrs. Olivia called me, whispering like she was reporting a spy mission. "Marcus," she said, "that woman was in your driveway last night with a flashlight and a scale." I almost spit out my coffee. Brenda sneaking around my property at midnight, weighing my trash can like a detective in a suburban crime drama. Then came the hardware store interrogations. She cornered our maintenance guy, demanding to know who'd bought concrete recently. She even started checking my Facebook posts, looking for construction hints. But the breaking point came when she weaponized city bureaucracy again. Thursday afternoon, a knock at the door. City inspector, clipboard in hand. He looked exhausted. "Sir," he sighed, "we got a complaint about an unauthorized concrete structure on your property." I led him around the side of the house. He stared at the trash can for about 30 seconds. "Ma'am filed this, didn't she?" he muttered. "Yeah, this is a garbage bin, not a bunker. You're good." He signed off and left. No violations, no issues, just one more humiliation for Brenda. But she wasn't done. The following week, the HOA sent an official notice demanding immediate property access for compliance verification. Translation: Brenda wanted to snoop around my yard. Unfortunately for her, I'd done my homework. "No access without a court order," I replied. "You can view anything visible from the public sidewalk." That was it. The last straw for her fragile ego. You could almost feel her rage vibrating through the cul-de-sac. Meanwhile, her Escalade was falling apart. The front bumper rattled, the paint cracked, one headlight dangled like a sad, blinking eye. Neighbors started referring to her as the concrete can lady. Even the kids were filming her morning drives, posting clips online. One of them went semi-viral. Brenda's Escalade clipping the edge of the trash can in glorious slow motion. But then, everything changed. One afternoon during a neighborhood gathering, Patricia Lopez, the only decent person on the HOA board, pulled me aside. Her tone was hushed, serious. "Marcus," she whispered, "Brenda's been having private meetings with Gerald about expanding board authority. She wants power to inspect homes, regulate contractors, even run background checks." I frowned. "Why?" Patricia glanced around before leaning closer. "She's also pushing maintenance contracts. Same company every time. Whitmore Construction. Ever heard of it?" My blood ran cold. That night, I sat at my computer, the glow of the monitor cutting through the darkness. I started searching public records, business registries, HOA filings, and there it was, clear as day. Whitmore Construction LLC, founded 6 months ago. Owners: Brenda Whitmore, 40%. President: Richard Whitmore, her late husband's brother. Timeline: May, company formed. July, HOA bids begin. September, she starts her harassment campaign, right after I questioned the maintenance budget at a board meeting. Every contract since then, awarded to Whitmore Construction. Every one of them underbid the competition by just $50 to $100. Not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to guarantee selection. 7 contracts, $23,400 in payments. 7 votes of approval, all signed by Brenda. It wasn't incompetence, it was embezzlement. She wasn't targeting me because of a trash can. She was targeting me because I'd unknowingly stumbled too close to her scam. The dangerous obstruction wasn't my bin, it was her paper trail. She'd weaponized the HOA to keep control, to silence anyone who questioned her. Every fake violation, every intimidation tactic, it was all part of the same web. And now I had the evidence. Business registrations, meeting minutes, contract awards, bank statements showing the transfers. It was all there. I printed it, scanned it, backed it up on 3 separate cloud drives. And then I sent the entire folder to my attorney, subject line urgent, possible criminal fraud, immediate review. That night I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, the cold air biting at my skin. Across the street, Brenda's house sat dark. Her Escalade, battered, cracked, humiliated, reflected the streetlight like a wounded animal. And as I watched, her porch light flicked on. A shadow moved past the curtains. She knew something had changed. She could feel it. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't the one under investigation. She was. And she had no idea that the next trash can she'd try to destroy would be the very thing that destroyed her entire life. It started with the sound of metal screaming against concrete, a sound that still makes me smile. Brenda's pearl white Escalade, once spotless and proud, now looked like it had survived a demolition derby. Over $1,200 in damage, all thanks to her obsession with proving she could move my illegal trash can. But that morning, as I watched from behind my kitchen window, coffee in hand and heart strangely calm, I realized something. This was never really about garbage. It was about justice. about standing up to a bully who'd mistaken silence for weakness. And the moment that SUV shuddered against 60 pounds of reinforced concrete, I knew this war was just getting started. That night, my garage stopped being a workshop. It became a war room. The air smelled like sawdust, oil, and strategy. I pushed my workbench aside, cleared the space, and set up folding tables covered in printouts, receipts, screenshots, and city records. On the far wall, I pinned an evidence board, red string zigzagging across photos, contracts, and a blown-up picture of Brenda's smug face beside her dented Escalade. At 7 p.m. sharp, my little army arrived. Mrs. Olivia first, clutching a thermos of jasmine tea like it was courage in liquid form. Then came Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, tool belt still clinking as he stepped in, grease on his hands and fire in his eyes. Patricia Lopez arrived next, arms full of HOA financial reports she'd quietly borrowed from the board office. And finally, Dale Kowalski, former auto body tech turned neighborhood wisecracker, rolled in carrying a box of donuts and a grin that said, "Let's wreck some lives, legally." I looked around the circle and said, "All right, here's what we're dealing with." When I taped the final timeline to the wall, the sight was almost cinematic, a full-blown corruption map staring back at us. Over $23,000 in questionable maintenance contracts, 7 blatant conflict of interest violations, 47 recorded harassment incidents, and 1 very expensive luxury SUV serving as physical proof of Brenda's unraveling sanity. Patricia stared at the documents, her voice quiet but trembling with anger. I knew those contracts smelled wrong. Every time I questioned her, she had these perfect rehearsed answers. It was all too prepared. Dale let out a low whistle as he studied the photos of her vehicle. That bumper's toast. Easy $2,000 minimum. Alignment's probably shot too. Your trash can's teaching her more about physics than high school ever did. We spent the next hour building a 4-pronged strategy that would have made any lawyer proud. Jim would handle surveillance, documenting every petty act of retaliation. Mrs. Olivia, bless her, volunteered to coordinate the door-to-door petition for community backing. Patricia would push the internal audit angle within the board, and Dale, ever the hands-on expert, became our technical witness for construction integrity. And me, I'd be the conductor of this suburban symphony of justice. Amanda Sterling, my attorney, had already confirmed the trifecta: harassment, financial fraud, and misconduct, all solid, provable, and criminal. But timing, that was everything. Move too early and she'd bury the evidence. Wait too long and she might torch it herself. So we moved like electricians tracing a live current. Deliberate, cautious, but with voltage building underneath. By Wednesday morning, the community phase began. I went house to house, binder under my arm, facts sharper than Brenda's gossip. Out of 127 homes, 89 signed the property rights petition, 34 demanded financial audits, and 12 volunteered to testify publicly. Mrs. Rodriguez, the woman who once refused to answer the door for Girl Scouts, threw it open before I'd even knocked. "That witch tried to find me for leaving my trash can out 15 minutes early," she spat. 15 minutes, like the garbage trucks are running military schedules now. By the time she was done, her signature carved deep into the petition paper like a personal declaration of war. The more doors I knocked on, the clearer the pattern became. Brenda's loyalists were always the ones who benefited from her selective enforcement, the ones with overgrown hedges and unpaid dues she conveniently ignored. Everyone else? They were just waiting for someone to stand up first. So I did. The media prep took 3 days. 3 days of late-night edits, data spreadsheets, and caffeine-fueled fury. Channel 7's investigative reporter, Sarah Kim, was no stranger to corrupt HOAs. I sent her a press kit that would make any newsroom salivate: contract records, timestamps, expert testimony, and yes, a 12-minute supercut of Brenda's car collisions, each more dramatic than the last. Then came the social media wildfire. Within 48 hours, Pinewood Gardens Transparency, our new Facebook group, hit 67 members. Neighbors started uploading their own violation letters, photos of Brenda's drive-bys, even dashcam clips. Someone, a creative genius, posted a time-lapse video of her daily collisions set to circus music. It went viral. Overnight, Brenda wasn't an authority figure. She was a meme. And my concrete trash can? It was a legend. By Thursday, she'd rammed it 53 times. The latest attempt ended with a dangling headlight and the neighborhood kids laughing at the bus stop. Emma told me, trying not to smile, "Dad, people at school are calling us the family with the unbreakable trash can." Tyler, ever the entrepreneur, started charging 50 cents to show classmates the videos. $5 a day. Dad, we're practically influencers. The story was spreading like wildfire, but behind the laughter, the real operation was tightening like a noose. By Sunday night, everything was aligned. Board meeting, Tuesday night, media interviews, Wednesday morning, criminal filings, Thursday afternoon, 118 residents committed to showing up, 17 ready to speak. But then Brenda snapped. It started with the sound of spray paint hissing in the night. I woke up to orange letters across my trash can spelling one simple word: move. Cute. 30 seconds with a pressure washer and it was gone. But what wasn't gone was the security footage. Crystal clear video of her sneaking around with a can of Rust-Oleum, the same pearl white Escalade idling 3 houses down. The next morning, a gas company inspector showed up unannounced. Anonymous complaint. Possible excavation without permit. He scanned the property for 2 hours before shaking his head. Whoever reported this, he muttered, either needs glasses or a therapist. Then Jim caught her hiring private security, a full-blown surveillance team parked outside my house watching my trash can. $200 a day, watching concrete. But the irony? My own upgraded cameras were watching them. Every click, every flash, every moment Brenda circled like a vulture. She was unraveling, and she didn't even realize she was documenting her own downfall. Then came the lowest blow. Emma came home in tears. She'd overheard Brenda gossiping with another parent, implying that I was a dangerous influence, that my family wasn't the right type for Pinewood Gardens. The racial undertones weren't subtle. That wasn't just HOA bullying anymore. That was character assassination. That night, I hired Beth Morrison, a retired police detective who specialized in harassment cases. $200 a day bought me credibility, protection, and someone who could testify about escalation patterns and threat behavior. The following week turned into a circus of desperation. Someone poured what looked like battery acid on the can. It stained, but didn't crack. Anonymous complaints about my lawn height, electrical work, even fake reviews on my business page. Every one of them screamed one name: Brenda Whitmore. Then Friday evening, Tyler's voice cut through the hum of the garage. "Dad, what's this thing under your truck?" I bent down and froze. Small, black, magnetic. A GPS tracker, blinking red, professional grade. I took photos, bagged it, and drove straight to the police station. Officer Martinez looked exhausted as he filled out the report. "This isn't HOA harassment anymore," he said. "This is criminal stalking." Meanwhile, State Farm had opened a fraud investigation. Brenda had filed a $3,200 claim, saying her damage came from a city street hazard. I gave them the footage. All 53 collisions. All deliberate. The investigator didn't even hide her reaction. "This isn't road damage," she said flatly. "This is self-inflicted property destruction. We're denying her claim and referring this to our fraud unit." The dominoes were falling. Fast. By Saturday, Brenda's Escalade looked like a modern art sculpture in desperation chic. The front bumper finally gave out during collision attempt 57, ripping clean off and skidding across my driveway like a wounded trophy. Neighbors watched from their windows in silent awe as Brenda, in her crisp business suit, scrambled to pick up the shattered remains of her ego. By Sunday, our evidence binder was thicker than a Bible. Harassment, fraud, stalking, corruption. Tuesday's board meeting wasn't going to be a discussion. It was going to be a reckoning. But then Monday came, and Brenda made her most desperate move yet. At 10:43 a.m., I got a voicemail from HOA President Gerald Thornfield. His voice cracked under the weight of stress. "Marcus, emergency session tonight, board liability concerns, you should probably attend." I didn't have to. Patricia texted me live updates from inside the meeting. Open quote, "She's accusing you of making terrorist threats, wants emergency powers to seize your property. Their attorney looks like he'd rather defend serial killers." Close quote. Classic Brenda. When the walls close in, she lights the house on fire. They tried to backdate financial disclosure forms to make it look like Brenda had declared her business connection months ago. But the digital timestamps, those glorious, unchangeable timestamps, told the truth. You can't rewrite ethics when the evidence lives on a public server. Meanwhile, insurance investigators were circling like hawks. State fraud examiner Maria Santos had already subpoenaed HOA financial records, meeting minutes, and Brenda's emails. The paper trail was unraveling faster than her bumper. And then, Tuesday afternoon, the final twist. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Cautious. Marcus, a voice whispered. Male. Tired. Broken. It was Richard Whitmore, Brenda's husband. This has to stop, he said, his words trembling. She spent over $8,000 on lawyers, surveillance, and car repairs. Our insurance is gone. The business is collapsing. Please, I need to know, what would it take to make this go away? I didn't answer. Not yet. Because at that moment, watching Brenda's world crumble under the weight of her own arrogance, I realized something even deeper than revenge. This wasn't just about a trash can anymore. It was about exposing what happens when power meets accountability, when silence learns to speak, when the people someone underestimated finally fight back. And as the sun dipped behind the cul-de-sac, the neighborhood waited. The cameras were ready. The meeting room chairs were filling. Brenda still thought she was fighting to win. She didn't realize the game was already over. She just hadn't heard the crack of the gavel yet. It's funny how one moment can flip the balance of power in an entire neighborhood. One sound, one name, one warrant folder in the hands of a calm police officer, and suddenly the Queen of Pinewood Gardens found herself standing on crumbling ground. For months, she'd stalked, schemed, and screamed about community standards. For months, she'd weaponized bylaws like daggers and hid her crimes behind polished smiles and fake HOA speeches. But tonight, she was out of time. And as the crowd gathered, over 100 neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder in a space meant for 40, justice felt real. The air was thick with nerves and popcorn energy. The cameras from Channel 7 buzzed, the fluorescent lights hummed like anxious bees, and right there in the center of it all sat Brenda Whitmore, Pinewood's self-appointed queen, trembling in funeral black. 2 hours earlier, her husband Richard had called me, his voice thin, breaking like weak wiring under stress. Marcus, he whispered, what would it take to make this go away? For a second, I almost pitied him. Almost. Because this wasn't about money anymore. Not about a refund. Not about saving face. His wife had stalked my family, vandalized my home, filed fake insurance claims, and doctored evidence. She'd turned a $23 trash can dispute into a full-blown suburban war. And the thing about wars? Eventually, someone loses everything. The first domino fell just before sunset. Brenda's last-ditch effort, a desperate restraining order based on fabricated evidence. Fake voicemails, doctored photos, imaginary witnesses. It would have been hilarious if it weren't so insane. But Judge Patricia Williams didn't find it funny. Not one bit. She scanned the evidence, her brow tightening with every page. Then she looked up with that look judges reserve for people wasting their time. Miss Whitmore, she said coldly, these recordings are clearly edited, these photos are obviously staged, and these witnesses appear to be fictional. Her gavel came down like thunder. Petition dismissed. Consider this your only warning. Brenda left the courthouse pale as chalk, clutching her folder like it contained her fading sanity. But she wasn't done. Not yet. Because desperation is gasoline, and that woman was about to set her entire life on fire. By 5:30 p.m., the Pinewood Community Center was packed. Cars lined both sides of Maple Street. Folding chairs scraped the floors. Neighbors whispered like spectators before a heavyweight fight. When Brenda finally strutted in, 10 minutes late, sunglasses on indoors, lawyer in tow, the room fell into that kind of hush you feel before a storm hits. Even the air conditioner seemed to hold its breath. Gerald Thornfield, the board's aging president, cleared his throat and called the meeting to order. His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. We'll begin with community concerns. Perfect cue. I stood, slowly. Every eye in the room turned. The lights buzzed louder, or maybe that was just the blood in my ears. Beside me sat my evidence boards, each page meticulously taped, every receipt, photo, and timestamp laid out like ammunition. This, I began, my tone steady but sharp, isn't about trash cans. It's not about bylaws or landscaping. It's about accountability, about corruption, about what happens when power goes unchecked. I gestured to the first board, 57 documented collision attempts, each one captured in HD. The audience murmured as I clicked the remote. On screen, Brenda's Escalade slamming, scraping, crunching against my concrete fortress again and again. The laughter was nervous at first, then turned into gasps as the reality sank in. The next slide, the GPS tracker found under my truck, installed illegally. Then the insurance claim, $3,200 for road hazard damage, denied after the investigators saw my footage. And finally, the financials. One by one, I laid out the contracts, the invoices, the payments, all flowing neatly from HOA accounts into Whitmore Construction. $23,000, I said, pacing slowly, my voice rising. That's how much of your money went into her family's business. 7 contracts, 7 undisclosed conflicts of interest, 7 violations of state nonprofit law. The room erupted, a wave of anger, disbelief, vindication. Mrs. Rodriguez stood, her voice slicing through the chaos. You raised my fees for this? People shouted, clapped, some even laughed, because the absurdity had reached cinematic levels. And then came the moment, the one I'd been waiting for. I turned, looked Brenda right in the eye, and said, You've spent thousands on lawyers, destroyed your $60,000 SUV, and committed insurance fraud, all to win a fight over a trash can. But the real crime, the unforgivable one, is the $47,000 you stole from this community. The crowd lost it. Cheers, shouts, and Brenda, she snapped. This is harassment, she screamed, rising so fast her chair toppled backward. You people don't understand standards. You don't understand what it takes to maintain property values. Her voice cracked, shrill and shaking. I built this neighborhood. I kept it clean. I kept it decent. The racial undertones in decent hung in the air like smoke. Channel 7's cameras zoomed in. Her lawyer's face turned gray. Gerald looked ready to pass out. When she pointed directly at Mrs. Olivia and shouted something about certain elements ruining the community, the crowd gasped. It was the final nail. Officer Derek Martinez stepped forward, cool as ice. Ma'am, he said, his tone professional but heavy, I have a warrant for your arrest. Charges include insurance fraud, falsified documentation, and harassment. The silence that followed was electric. And then, cheers. Applause that shook the walls. Brenda's face drained of color. She tried to argue, sputtering words that barely formed sentences, but it was over. Handcuffs clicked, cameras flashed. Justice served concrete cold. The fallout was faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours, the Queen of Pinewood Gardens had lost everything. Her resignation email was short and bitter. Hostile work environment, unfair treatment, effective immediately. By Thursday, the district attorney filed charges, insurance fraud and criminal harassment. The penalties, 6 months in jail and thousands in fines. Friday brought the final blow, her business license revoked. Whitmore Construction, the golden goose, gone. But the best part? The audit. Our emergency CPA team uncovered $47,000 in misused funds. That money came back home, refunded evenly to every homeowner. By Christmas, each family received a $370 check in the mail. It wasn't just money, it was vindication. Then came the call. Richard again, his voice hollow, defeated. The settlement's in the mail, he said. $12,500 as agreed. Brenda's moving to Florida with her sister. I paused, let that sink in. Good luck, I said. And for a second, just a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because some lessons are expensive, and this one, it cost them everything. Pinewood Gardens changed after that. Patricia Lopez, once the quiet voice of reason, was elected board president unanimously. Transparency became the new law of the land. Monthly financial reports, public audits, conflict disclosures, everything Brenda had buried, we dragged into daylight. Our first major project, a brand new playground, funded entirely by recovered embezzlement money. Watching my kids, Emma and Tyler, help design the swings and slides felt like more than victory. It felt like redemption. Neighbors who once avoided us now brought cookies. Kids played without fear of citations. The air, somehow, felt lighter. But the ripple didn't stop there. The case, Holloway v. Pinewood Gardens HOA, became a statewide precedent. 12 other homeowners used it to challenge corruption. The HOA Accountability Act passed the legislature 6 months later, requiring all associations to disclose their financials publicly. Channel 7's coverage won a regional Emmy. Sarah Kim, the reporter who covered the case, still calls sometimes for quotes when another HOA scandal breaks. And those collision videos, over 200,000 views online. People from across the country watched one man's concrete trash can become a symbol of suburban rebellion. We even made it a monument right there in the community center lobby. A bronze plaque beneath it reads, Property Rights Protected. 2023. Every new homeowner gets the story during orientation. Contractors stop by to see the famous indestructible can. It's our trophy, our proof, our legend. The best part? The healing. Every September, Pinewood hosts Concrete Can Days, a neighborhood festival celebrating resilience and community unity. Food trucks, bounce houses, music, workshops on homeowner rights. Last year, 800 people showed up. What started as harassment turned into hope. Even better, we built something lasting from it, the Marcus Holloway Property Rights Scholarship. Funded by the settlement money, it's already helped 4 students attend college. Emma's using it as inspiration for her journalism major. Her essay about fighting corruption with concrete evidence got her into 3 top programs. Tyler, he started a YouTube channel called Suburban Justice, covering real HOA scandals with the tenacity of a young investigator. The irony isn't lost on me. The woman who tried to destroy us ended up inspiring us. My custody evaluation even noted the change. Children benefit from seeing parents protect their family through lawful, principled means. And my electrical contracting business? It's booming. Turns out, people respect a man who solves problems with evidence and integrity. Sometimes David does beat Goliath. Not with luck, not with force, but with proof, patience, and a 60-pound block of reinforced concrete. And now the legend of the concrete can continues to grow. More stories are coming, more battles, more Karens, more victories. Because for every corrupt HOA board hiding behind fine print and bylaws, there's someone out there quietly watching, documenting, building their own case brick by brick. And when the time comes, they'll drop the hammer too.